Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho and in today's video we are taking a look at the top transfers going into game week 9. In particular, I want to cover off the best premium midfielder for your teams, which Spurs midfielder to go for, and of course the best defenders for your team. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure you drop a like and of course smash that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. So first up, we need to talk about the best premium midfielder for your teams. And the three players that we're going to be looking at right now are going to include Phil Foden, Son and Cole Palmer. And it's worth noting, Cole Palmer has had another price rise to 10.9 million. So he really is the in-demand midfielder for a lot of managers right now. But these three midfielders, all in their own right, have a reason to be in your FPL teams. I haven't included Mo Salah because, of course, he is in his own bracket when it comes to price point. And it will be a player maybe we touch on in a future video. But today, we are focusing on Foden, Son and Cole Palmer. So first up, I want to address Phil Foden as an asset because in game week 9 in isolation, I think he is the best option out of all of the three players at home against Southampton. Played in their Champions League fixture, scored a goal, and I would fully expect Phil Foden to feature in game week 9 as a starter. We know that Kevin De Bruyne is still touch and go for game week 9, potentially back in game week 10. So I think the minutes for Foden, therefore, are improved with that home game against Southampton. And really, based in terms of fixtures, there aren't many better games that you can get than Southampton at home. Now, look at the underlying numbers. I really want to take these with a pinch of salt because we haven't really seen Phil Foden much this season due to injury. 0.15 XG per 90, not incredible. 0.21 expected assists per 90. So you're very much buying Phil Foden on the basis of what we've seen last season and, of course, the fixture in hand. Outside of that, I don't think he is a fantastic pick if you are going for just underlying numbers this season. And if you're looking at a long-term option, that is where I start to have slight concerns about Phil Foden because Son and Cole Palmer, I know I'm getting guaranteed minutes from them. Foden in game weeks 10, 11 and 12, I have no idea right now. So Foden, I think, is very much the best pick in game week 9, but not a good long-term option when we compare it to the other picks. So again, let me know in the comment section if you're looking at a one game week punt. That'll be Phil Foden. If we're looking longer term, Son and Cole Palmer. Now, when we take a look at the both of these here, Palmer is just in a league of his own right now. 0.54 expected goals per 90, 0.55 expected assists per 90. Basically double that of Son that we have seen this season. And the big chance is Palmer's also accumulating at 0.92 per 90 minutes. If I was in a situation right now where I didn't have a wildcard available, even though the fixtures are very, very poor for Chelsea, some would argue, I still would bring in Cole Palmer. I really think that is the case. Newcastle at home, I don't think is a terrible fixture for Chelsea. Man United away, we don't really know what Man United team we are going to get. And I still think Palmer can deliver in that fixture. Really, Arsenal at home is going to be the one that isn't that good for Chelsea. But then after that, we know the fixtures long-term are fantastic. And again, the reason why I think the wildcard is so important is because if you don't have it available, I think Palmer in game week 12, regardless, is going to need to come into your team. So it just ends up not having to use an additional transfer to get to him later down the line. And of course, with his price potentially rising again and again, you might be picking him up at 11 million come game week 12, especially if you're not going for a player that has high upside as an alternative whose price could increase as well. And I do think one of those could be Son. Now, with those fixtures coming up, Palace away, who are really poor this season, I think is fine. Aston Villa at home, not an incredible fixture, I'm going to be honest with you, but with that high line that they play, could we see Son score? Absolutely. And then Ipswich at home, basically the money fixture for Son in game week 11. And especially when we compare that to what Palmer has in that game week at home against Arsenal. Now, of course, after that, Man City away in game week 12, whereas it swings for Cole Palmer. That is where you definitely would jump from Son to Cole Palmer. And another reason why, if you have your wildcard available, then I would be more tempted to maybe swing towards Son, knowing that you can easily jump to Cole Palmer in game week 12 if you activate that wildcard. So based on the underlying numbers right now and based on the long-term perspective, I think Cole Palmer is absolutely your man. But if you have a wild card available and the potential of captaining Son in game week 11 at home against Ipswich means that I do like the option for Son in your teams as a 3-game week punt and then move into Cole Palmer. Foden for me is literally just a 1-week punt, and that is it. Then I think you are really rolling the dice in terms of his minutes. So those are my thoughts. Let me know who is the best premium for you in the comments section. The one caveat that we need to say about Son is that there are alternatives in that Spurs team, whereas Chelsea, I think, is Cole Palmer or nobody. So taking into account Son and those underlying numbers, I now want to take a look at some alternative Spurs midfielders, because this may actually be where we need to go rather than Son himself. So here we have got the underlying numbers for the alternatives. Kulusevski at 6.2 million, Johnson at 6.7 million, and Maddison at 7.6 million. So a little bit of a price difference between all of these players, but all of these being at least 2 million cheaper than that of Son. Even the likes of Johnson and Kulusevski are more than 3 million cheaper. And what I think is really important in our FPL teams to keep that premium spot in the midfield, maybe the best alternative is actually having Cole Palmer as your premium and one of these three as your Spurs attacker. So take a look at the underlying numbers right now, because we know the fixtures. They're great for the next 3, not very good in game week 12. In terms of XG, the pattern continues. Brennan Johnson is still the man you want to get if you're accumulating big chances and great goal scoring opportunities. 0.48 expected goals per 90 is double that of Son. Again, Johnson plays slightly more minutes than Son, but I really think that Brennan Johnson was unlucky not to deliver in game week 8. And on another day, Johnson picks up some returns, Son picks up some returns, and we're starting to ask the question, is Son actually worth the 3 million more than Brennan Johnson? I think it's very much short-term narrative that is making us very much go towards Son rather than still look at Brennan Johnson as a pick. Now on the bonus points, he isn't great. Bonus points this season are very much catering towards those players that do a lot and get fouled a lot. Hence why you can see Kulusevski and Maddison decent on the bonus points per 90. There, Maddison in particular. Now, the one that I want to quickly pay attention to is going to be Kulusevski, because he's getting a lot of talk right now. The cheapest of the Spurs midfielders at 6.2. With all of the players now available for Spurs, Son playing off the right, the left, Brennan Johnson off the right, Solanke down the middle, very much seeing the 210s being deployed by Ange in pretty much every fixture. When we take a look at the numbers for Kulusevski, 0.2 XG per 90, 0.27 expected assists per 90. Decent underlying numbers, not as good as that of James Maddison's, who is better in both of those departments, but we need to remember this is a player that's 1.4 million cheaper than Maddison and basically playing in the exact same position. So first and foremost, I think it's a case of, is Kulusevski better than Maddison? No. I think the answer is no. I still think Maddison is better, but when we take into account FPL value, then yes, I would still choose Kulusevski over Maddison. I think that 1.4 million saving that you can make is worthwhile, and it would do a lot to your squad overall than just going for James Maddison. So Maddison's great. If you want to spend that extra, you can, but I think Kulusevski is better than him in terms of FPL saving. So it very much comes down to Kulusevski versus Brennan Johnson, and I still think Brennan Johnson is the man to go for. Yes, Kulusevski has many more avenues to points. I think he could actually get, the bonus points, the assists, the goals. Johnson very much is just dependent on goals. But in a team like Spurs, who are accumulating the most expected goals per game of any team, I want the guy who's scoring the goals. And that still remains Brennan Johnson at 6.7 million. So Johnson, for me, still the Spurs midfielder to go for, but you are very much reliant on this Spurs team clicking for him to get the returns. Otherwise, if Spurs are struggling, then it comes down to individual performances, and that is where Maddison and Kulusevski probably do step up, because Johnson is just all about getting the service in this team. But hey, when you've got Maddison and Kulusevski putting it on the plate for you, I think Johnson will continue to get those returns in these games coming up. The big thing is it Brennan Johnson or Son? And that is a very difficult one to answer, because Son gives you the captaincy option in game week 11 at home against Ipswich. I don't feel that confident putting the captaincy on Brennan Johnson. And if we do find out that Son is the penalty taker, then that just elevates him into another plane where I think he is clearly the better pick and probably worth the 3 million more. But look, if you can't fit Son in your team, I still think Brennan Johnson is a fantastic alternative for your squads. So last up in terms of the player comparisons, I want to take a look at some attacking defenders for our teams, because I'm conscious that a lot of managers right now are maybe taking some money out of the defence to free up the funds to maybe get to some of these premiums that we discussed. I'm seeing some managers sell the likes of Trent, some people are selling Robertson, or some people in general are just looking at cheaper alternatives in the game. So we've got exactly that. We have got Aït-Nouri at 4.4 million. We got Pedro Porro at 5.5 million, and then of course we have Vardy at 6.1 million. So we've basically got price points at each range here, depending on what direction you want to go in. And when we're talking about cheap defenders right now, I think there are a lot available. I think we've got Collins at Brentford, we've got Mikalenko at Everton, but in terms of long-term FPL value, I still think Aït-Nouri is the play. Mikalenko probably for the clean sheets, but I think Aït-Nouri, when we look at the underlying numbers, and I think we can see a slight improvement in Wolves going forward with these fixtures under Gary O'Neill. Brighton away, I think, is very difficult. Not a great entry point for Aït-Nouri. But Palace at home, Southampton at home, Fulham away, and the fixtures get good as we continue. I think Aït-Nouri is a good player that will see his price increase as we progress through these fixtures. And 0.21 XG per 90 is fantastic, and 0.15 expected assist per 90 also great. And you can see he's actually outscoring the premiums in Porro and Vardy. So when we take a look at Aït-Nouri as a whole, I really think this is a good player for you to downgrade if you have to. I'm not sitting here saying you have to sell your Liverpool defenders, because I don't think, of course, Aït-Nouri is going to outscore them. But if it does free up the funds for you to go elsewhere with your team, I think Aït-Nouri long term is a great pick. For this specific game week, he might be a tricky play for your teams. Now, when we take a look at the other two premiums, Porro and Vardy, Porro very much one of those players that looks fantastic on the eye, because as you can see, shots per 90, 2.01. So whenever you tune into a Spurs game, you're always seeing him taking shots, taking pop shots. But when we look at the underlying numbers, that is where it's very clear. These are very much long-range pop shots. He's having 2 shots per 90, but only 0.07 expected goals, which basically indicates he is shooting from anywhere and not really getting into goal-scoring opportunities. But end of the day, we have seen he has history of scoring these worldies, and I think it could continue throughout the season. 0.13 expected assists as well is decent as well, and I think that will improve in these upcoming fixtures that we are seeing. In terms of the actual FPL points, slightly unlucky, 3.51 FPL points compared to the expected FPL points of 4.56. And I do think with the upcoming fixtures, he could actually deliver a decent haul at some point, either the Ipswich game in particular looking like the money fixture. So lastly, we have Vardy, 6.1 million. So basically the biggest premium outside of the Liverpool defender in Trent and maybe Gabriel. 0.13 expected goals, 0.09 expected assists. Now, first and foremost, we need to say that this guy knows how to score bangers. We talk about Pedro Porro. Vardy is in another world. Now, Vardy is a great option, absolutely. And I think with the game at home against Southampton, and talk about double-digit hauls, I think that absolutely has the potential there. But Bournemouth away after is proving to be a tough place to go for clean sheets. Then Brighton away, I don't like that fixture in terms of clean sheets. And then Spurs at home. So I don't actually think after the Southampton game there are many clean sheets afoot for Vardy. And Nathan Ake has returned, who featured in the Champions League game. I still expect Vardy to play in game week 9, but we could see some rotation depending on the fixture and depending on what type of player Pep wants to play. So I still think Vardy is a great investment, especially for game week 9, but I feel like maybe the ship has sailed a little bit for him, and I don't think you need to expect him to score every single week, because they are turning out to be worldies and the underlying numbers aren't amazing compared to that of even like a Aït-Nouri, for example. So all in all, I think Aït-Nouri is a brilliant option to go to long term if you're looking to free up the funds. Pedro Porro is absolutely the short-term punt if you want to chase upside. And I think Vardy is great if you want to play for a safe defender. But with Man City still leaking goals outside of game week 9, I don't love him long-term. So finally, we need to take a look at these game week 9 predicted points, because end of the day, if you have Erling Haaland, you have to put the captaincy on him. I spoke about this last week away against Wolves. I felt like it was probably the best captain, but there still was some doubt because Wolves away, you just don't really know what you're getting. This week, If Haaland doesn't deliver, I think we just all put our hands up and say it was the right pick, just one of those game weeks, because 10.1 predicted points, I just don't think you could look past it. If you don't have Haaland, then of course the other players come into their own. But if you own Haaland, how can you not put the captaincy on him? So he is in another world. Put him in. Would I be buying Haaland is the other question. The answer is going to be no. I don't think if you own him, you should be buying him for this one specific game week, because we can see a situation where they go 4-0 up, Haaland scores 1 and comes off early. So if you don't own Haaland, I just wouldn't buy him. I would just grin and bear it. But this week, you absolutely have to have a Haaland captain. The big question mark is, do we triple captain Haaland? Because 10.1 predicted points, I doubt we're going to see much better this season outside of a double game week. And with double game weeks being few and far between this season, which has been announced, and later on this year when they do get announced, are we actually going to see the player that we truly want getting an ideal double game week? So for me, if you're looking to triple captain, I think this is probably the week to do so. I think the fixture is too damn good, 10.1. Now, we will get some midfielders who have equally good games. And do I prefer captaining a midfielder over Haaland? Yes, I do. But with the triple captain available in game week 9, with a player like Haaland who has such a ridiculous ceiling, I think triple captain on Haaland absolutely needs to be considered. And I think a lot of the community will do so the closer we get to that Friday night deadline. Outside of Haaland, then I think Cole Palmer is the leading one, 6.7. I don't love the idea of Mbeumo captain, but he is looking good on the predicted points at 6.1. Then we have the likes of Ollie Watkins, and then the Man City pack in Gundo, Vardial, Edison, Savio. Salah always appears on these lists. So to conclude, Haaland, I think, is a brilliant triple captaincy option. 10.1 predicted points is outrageous, and I really think he should be considered for your teams. It just comes down to if you're waiting for a double game week. But then you need to remember, we still have a lot of chips to play with the bench boost and the mystery chip. If you don't have Haaland, then I do think Cole Palmer is the next best alternative for your team. So thanks so much for tuning in today's video. Really hope it provided some value. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and of course, smash that subscribe button. And I will see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.